Welcome to Talking Giants player profiles and projections. And today we have the one, the only Kenny G. Kenny Golladay, 6'4", 214 pounds, 27 years old. I almost said 214 years old. I didn't screw up this time.
There you go.
Justin, he
Progress.
was the prized possession of the 2021 offseason. Signed a 4-year, $72 million deal. That took forever, by the way, to happen. Basically started on Wednesday, ended on Saturday night. And he was brought in to be the alpha number one wide receiver. And honestly, I am very excited for it. Daniel Jones has never had the advantage in his entire career that Kenny Golladay is for the New York Giants. And I just can't wait to see that connection start and grow.
Even including Duke, right? That Daniel Jones has never had a skill position player. I mean, Saquon Barkley, but never had a wide receiver as good as Kenny Golladay. Yeah, Bobby Skinner. That was probably the most fun stretch of the offseason. I know it was a pretty big time of growth for us too, because basically anything that the Giants did in the middle of waiting for Kenny Golladay to happen, it was big news because people were like, oh, but what about Kenny Golladay? Oh, but let's react to kind of how, cool this John Ross signing. Let's react to how good this Ifeadi Odenigbo and Danny Shelton. So it was kind of like a cool time for us as kind of just as a show and as a channel. But yeah, then once Kenny Golladay actually happened, it's like, whoa, we're doing this. And it wasn't totally expected. I kind of talked myself into the fact that, the Giants are going to play it cool. They're going to play it smooth. Last offseason, it taught us that, hey, James Bradbury, good value, Blake Martinez, good value, that they're going to make like these good value signings, even not go out and get the big superstar. Hey, but that's what they did. They got the big superstar in Kenny Golladay, best contested catch guy in the National Football League. If there is one player that fits this boring ass Jason Garrett system the best, it is Kenny Golladay, because what you need to do in this Jason Garrett system, it doesn't allow its players. It doesn't maximize its players. The players have to maximize the system. And that's exactly what Kenny Golladay can do.
Yeah, he was literally the perfect fit for, one, Daniel Jones is a touch thrower. So what does that work well with? Contested catch wide receivers. If Tyreek Hill is like, yeah, you don't really need to place the ball perfectly at Tyreek Hill. He's just going to get open. Kenny Gall, and you don't have to play the ball perfectly for Kenny G either. But the point being is like, hey, put some touch on it, put that ball where you want, and let Kenny Golladay go and get it. And that's where the perfect fit is. And perfect fit because the Giants were so lacking in big plays. Even though Daniel Jones was the most efficient on deep ball passing, they desperately needed big plays. And Kenny Golladay provides that almost. I know you have some stats that like compared Kenny Golladay versus the Giants by themselves, and it's staggering to see like what Kenny Golladay is capable of.
Yeah, so we'll get into that right now. But first, I haven't said this in a single PPP, and I think I haven't said it kind of in a while, and I'm proud of myself because it's what I said like every single episode last season. This is a league that is full of explosive plays. And on offense, you need to produce explosive plays, and on defense, you need to prevent explosive plays. That is what the NFL is today, where offense is kind of no matter what. And even the Giants did this like a little bit. You're going to hold the ball for a little bit. The Giants' average time of possession last year actually was middle of the pack, even though their yards per drive was low, and obviously their points per game was extremely low. But they were also bottom of the barrel in passing explosive plays, and you need to produce 15, 20 plus yard passing plays, because what those do is that flips the game script. It takes you from your own end zone to midfield. It takes you from midfield to field goal range or in the red zone. So, that's exactly what you want in Kenny Golladay. It provides no excuses for this Giants offense if he's healthy, and if he's here, provides no excuses for this Giants offense to do it. So in 2019, because that was the year that Kenny Golladay played, 16 games. Deep ball numbers. If you compare Daniel Jones's 2020 deep ball numbers of 20 plus yards and Kenny Galladay's 2019 numbers of 20 plus yards, Jones had 20 completions on 43 attempts, 652 yards, and 6 touchdowns. One quarterback who throws the ball 30 sometimes a game. Kenny Golladay is one receiver, and for his 2019 deep ball numbers, 16 completions, 4 less, 36 attempts, 7 less, 628 yards, some 20 yards less, and 5 touchdowns. That's one man, Bobby. One man. You're muted. Good job.
Basically put up all of Daniel Jones' deep numbers on his own in 2019.
Crazy.
where he in total he had 65 catches, 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns, which led the NFL that season. And the Giants struggled mightily in the red zone in 2020, and Kenny Golladay, Kyle Rudolph, who we'll talk about him on a later date. Hopefully he gets healthy. It's like that's what they added. Where it's like, okay, like now I don't want to be just throwing fades to Kenny Golladay or anything in the end zone. You can tag those on plays, but you don't want to have your entire play just dedicated to throwing a one-on-one fade. But it really does make a difference. And that's why even like you mentioned at the top, even if Jason Garrett's the same guy, there should still be much higher expectations because you have players like Kenny Golladay now. And then, all the other, addition to Saquon, adding other guys, but Kenny Golladay being the main one of those guys that can add so much value to Daniel Jones. And he just I think he's going to make everyone better. Like he's going to be that alpha number one wide receiver. And guess what? Now Darius Slayton never gets cornerback one treatment or safety shade over the top. Like never gets that. Sterling Shepard, who's having a good camp, it allows you, to get, for them to show if they're going to cover that deep ball quicker, and you get down to your checkdowns and the Shepards and the running backs and those guys.
Right. I want to go over some a little bit more advanced numbers before we kind of can maybe talk about, because he really does improve everybody else. He's not going to be a guy that's going to get, I think, 100 catches because he's somewhat of a low catch rate guy because you're targeting him deep down the field. That's who this guy is. So his average depth of target, 15.4 yards in 2019. That's kind of a lot. 5 yards after the catch per reception in 2019. I find that to be insane, Bobby. If you're getting 5 yards after the catch per reception when you're being targeted so deep, I mean, that's insane. This dude is
better than any of the Giants wide receivers last year.
Yeah. And the Giants wide receivers were not targeted deep down the field, where typically the intermediate routes, you're creating more separation because defenses are playing back. Because again, they're trying to prevent the explosive play. 52 first downs on 65 catches. Since 2019, only one player in the NFL has converted 80% or more of their receptions into first downs. Kenny Golladay. 39.3 yards per catch when targeted 20 plus yards down the field. I was talking about how when Darius Slayton was getting like 30 yards per catch when targeted 20 plus yards, that was a lot. I mean, Kenny Golladay, he adds 10 to that. 50% catch rate when targeted 10 plus yards in 2019, which, hey, for a guy that kind of is seen as a lower catch rate guy because he's being targeted down deep, a 50% catch rate when targeted 10 plus yards. That's pretty darn good. You're basically, you're moving the chains on a 1st and 10 when you're being targeted 10 plus yards down the field half of the time, 1 out of every 2 times. And that's pretty darn good. So, really just pumped to see where the offense can go and how Daniel Jones can develop with the best skill position player outside of Saquon Barkley that he's had since high school, definitely since college.
And we're talking about him being this big play guy targeted downfield, which granted that is what he's brought in to do, but there's also like he runs the full route tree too. Mm-hmm. Running digs, slants, curls. And if you want to see a good example of that, and I think it's beautiful, is the James Bradbury game a couple years ago where he had 8 catches, 113 yards and a touchdown. And James Bradbury played really good in that game, but Kenny Golladay, like they use him on some shorter routes, and then obviously had the game-winning, really contested catch play at the end of the game. But it's like he can run the full route tree. He's not simply just a, go deep, maybe turn it into a dig every once in a while. Like he can run the full route tree. Like you said, he's not going to be used a ton like that. At least he wasn't in Detroit. But it's like he's still capable of doing all those things. So yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to see him work with Daniel Jones and just make him that much better. Like it's just no matter what happens with Jason Garrett, like Daniel Jones and Kenny Golladay should have a good season together. Like I think that should be the expectation. No matter if we run the exact same type of offense, Kenny Golladay should still have a good season with Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and if defenses still want to run that single high safety look and not respect the Giants' ability to throw the ball deep, which at least to start the season, that's what I'm kind of expecting. Hey, it's kind of like Vic Fangio, in the Denver Broncos. It's kind of like prove to me that you actually can do this on a consistent basis and beat teams with explosive plays. And if they want to do that, then guess what? Kenny Golladay should have a pretty good first game. You know, we have to. I want to ask you about the injury and the hamstring injury. He's going to be out for a couple of weeks, but he'll be back hopefully for the regular season, stuff like that. How does that impact long term? But you know, if teams are still going to be running that single high safety, and if that safety is not going to be getting over to Kenny Golladay basically maybe in time, then some big plays should be going on for Kenny Golladay to start the season. But Bobby, let's kind of finish off with this. You know, he tweaked his hamstring. I'm glad it's only 2 to 3 weeks. I think that's like best case scenario, and that was the report that came out like the next day after the injury. Is that he avoided the worst case scenario. Hamstring injuries are tricky over the summer, but still missing 2 to 3 weeks when Kenny Golladay and Daniel Jones have been putting a lot of work already in on the side with each other, which I love to see. These 2 to 3 weeks are important. So what's your thought process on that? Is there going to be a little bit of a slow transition into the season in terms of their chemistry? What are you expecting?
Well, apparently they're babying him with this, you know, like that's the plan. And,
which they should. They definitely should.
Yeah. I mean, this is coming out Monday. We're recording it on Thursday, and they plan to baby him on it. But I do think like before maybe he comes back to officially practice, there's just still like, let's get back to working with Daniel Jones on the side. You know, like don't put him in full pads practice, but like, you know, Shane Lemieux, like he's out there practicing in some of the lighter drills. So like I said, they're babying him. I wanted to see him in preseason where that's not going to happen, or it'd be very surprising, but I'm not stressing about that. But I just, you know, week one, I'm excited for everything, but I'm very excited for that first Kenny Golladay catch. And that first Kenny Golladay, like there's nothing I'm looking forward to more in the season. Like what moment are you looking forward to the most? Is the first Daniel Jones Kenny Golladay touchdown.
Yeah. I kind of just have the feeling that because of the lackluster talent that Daniel Jones has had at wide receiver in the past, that I'm feeling these dudes are going to be fine. Kenny Golladay is good. Kenny Golladay has worked with some ragtag quarterbacks in the past. You know, Matt Stafford's been hurt, you know, last couple of years, and he's been in and out, and Kenny Golladay has still had to be productive despite of that. Go ahead, Bobby.
Well, you brought that up, and I know this is, you know, every fan base has this, but you know, there's some Kenny Golladay tweets, and then you'll have like, oh, you all are going to find out that Matt Stafford made him, which by the way, I think Matt Stafford's going to do really well with the Rams, but he is severely overrated by a lot of people. Like a lot of Detroit's issues were Matt Stafford. Like he's very turnover prone. The last couple of years, he's been a little better, but nonetheless, this idea that Matt Stafford made Kenny Golladay, look at his stats with David Blau and like Chase Daniel as his QB. They're almost identical to with Matt Stafford. Now they're better with Stafford, and they should be, but like they're very close to the same amount of numbers. So that narrative, I just seen it a couple of times during the preseason, and I was like, I don't like this at all because it's just flat out not true.
Not true, not funny. Kenny Golladay, 2021. Let's rock and roll.
Let's make it happen, Kenny Golladay. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you guys. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, let's go Big Blue.